cut my job, say goodbye to millions of dollars. I worked for a major US telecommunications company for over 10 years. One of the jobs I had there was as an emergency overnight tech support for major accounts. I'm talking about accounts like emergency services, traffic lights, the FBI, NASA, and the White House. I personally fixed the White House Chief of Staff's phone twice. This was all handled by 11 people in a call center that was one of only 2 in the country that were open all night, mainly for customers who were overseas. Because we were such a small team, and because the people we dealt with were the overnight IT people at their various companies, we were on a first-name basis with many of the techs who called us. One day, the vice president of our company decides to step down and take a job as the head of another call center. His brilliant idea is to make his call center the only call center for all business and government accounts in the country, including the ones my team handled overnight. Naturally, this meant dissolving my team. We were all very upset. We liked our jobs. Only the absolute best techs got to be on our team, and for good reason. When something got elevated to our level, it had to be taken care of fast. And some of the systems we dealt with were so obscure or old that no one at the company except us and our daytime colleagues even knew they existed. This also meant that we had to be ready to answer at a moment's notice. So we spent most of the night doing nothing, just waiting for a call. The companies and government entities paid extra for this quick response. Even so, over the years, my team kept getting assigned more and more little jobs to do between calls, which we handled easily because, well, we were the best. It was almost my dream job. So when we get word that our jobs are going to this other call center that, until now, wasn't even open overnight, we were upset. Yet most of my team was still pretty supportive. We offered to train the new techs at the other call center, and some of us even offered to travel there for a week or so to do it, but we were all turned down. Our last week on the job comes, and we were there mainly as backup for the new team in the other call center. We're not being routed calls, but we're ready on chat if the new guys have any questions. The questions start coming in, and they're not what we expected. Instead of asking about obscure, outdated systems that no one but us even know about, the new team is asking us about things like how to fill out a timesheet for a shift that starts before and ends after midnight. This was their supervisor asking me. We ended up answering really basic questions that anyone at our call center, much less anyone on our team, would have known, and we all got a bit worried. Then the supervisor who asked me about the timesheets asks how many calls we typically get in a night, and I say, oh, between 2 and 5 per person usually. Then he asks how many people were on my team. 11, I say. 8 to 10 on any given night. Oh, the supervisor replies, we have 33. I wondered why we were getting so few calls. They didn't have to do the little tasks my team did between calls either. They couldn't. They weren't even trained for the calls they were getting. The next week, my team was transferred into the normal overnight call queue, handling boring calls from people who didn't read or listen to the directions we gave them about how to make their phones work while overseas. A week after that, other regular overnight reps start asking me and the other former elite reps questions about the systems that only we would know about. Suspicious. A few days later, I get a call transferred to me, and it's one of the overnight IT guys from the major accounts. I ask how he got a hold of me, and he says that the first guy he talked to transferred him to me. Turns out, of course, the new reps at the new call center were still untrained, so they were just dumping all calls into my call center's general queue and hoping that out of the 60 or so techs working there, the one who'd pick up would be from the former major accounts team. Since 3 of our 11 people had quit when our team was dissolved, the odds of that were pretty damn low, which meant it took multiple transfers, which meant they weren't getting the help from our company that they needed within the contractually obligated time frame. I went to the director of my call center to let him know about this issue. I hoped that it would mean that since the new team was failing that hard, the company would see reason and reinstate my team again. Nope. My director informed me that the team would not, under any circumstance, be reinstated at our call center. I could tell he was not happy about this at all. So then came the malicious compliance. My director told me and every other overnight tech at the center that if we were transferred a call from a major account, we were not to touch it, as we were not authorized to handle those accounts. The next night, the accounts wouldn't even open for us, because our security clearance had suddenly been revoked. We were to transfer all such calls back to the correct queue. We were also instructed to forward any correspondence sent to us from the new major accounts team to our supervisors, whether chat or email. In a few days, the transfers to our center stopped. Now, I wish I could say that the company saw the error of its ways. My team was reinstated, and everything went back to the way it was. But it didn't. Instead, the company hemorrhaged major accounts like crazy. We lost accounts whose monthly bills were in the millions of dollars due to our failure to keep the terms of our contracts. Barely a month after it was created, the overnight team at the other call center was disbanded, and the jobs outsourced. Then the outsourcers started transferring the calls to my center. Again, I went to our director, hoping against hope my team would be reinstated. Nope. But the transfers stopped again, and the company lost even more multi-million-dollar accounts. Last year, the company announced the layoffs of tens of thousands of employees. I wonder why. I saw the writing on the wall, and got the hell out with the best severance package I could. So did my call center director. He was no fool either. All because some idiot executive had a bright idea and not even the slightest clue how to execute it. I don't have the time, and you don't have a job. When I started working for a local council IT support desk in 2005, the standard operating procedure for answering calls was that when the phone rang, we would take the user details, their fault description, and attempt to fix the issue. This went on for 6 years, until we had a new manager with several innovative ideas, which we all knew was not going to work in our particular environment. New manager calls a meeting one day with the entire team, including his own manager and the head of IT. He lays out the new rules and procedures. We respond that his procedures were not going to work because of various other protocols and the distance between sites. No one in authority listened to our concerns. 2 main policies at issue were 1. That we divided into 3 shifts: morning shift, day shift, and late shift, and 2. That only the day shift is supposed to spend time fixing the more complex issues. Morning shift and late shift had been reduced to simply call takers. Call takers had 2 minutes per call, and any breach was brought up at your monthly review. Of all the new policies, the 2-minute per call rule was the worst. Not only did we have a mere 2 minutes to take a call, we had to attempt some troubleshooting and write up all the notes. If this was a new employee, we also had to add their details onto the system. Being the most senior support system on the team, I made a mental list of what I could do in that 2 minutes. It was a small list, but it meant that when the first shift arrived at 7 a.m., most of the important work could be done. Malicious Compliance 1. After a month, the department was in chaos. Because we could only work 2 minutes before handing it off to the day shift, there were a lot of calls for the 3 day shift workers to attempt to fix. The outstanding queue went from 100 calls to nearly 2,000 in that month. I maximized my time on every call. If I couldn't fix the call, I ensured that every call would take just under the 2-minute mark, then dump them into the day shift call queue. Dropped calls, people who called and hung up, increased drastically, and one member of our team went on long-term sick leave due to stress. Eventually, the boss decided to come in early and see the problem for himself. He sees me and another tech taking calls and stands over us while we work through the calls. We both take less than 2 minutes per call and follow his rules to the letter. He has no reason to complain, but sees that the calls are dropping. With 2 people taking calls, 2 minutes per call, and a peak of 30 calls around the 8:30 a.m. time means that lots of these calls drop, only to call back later. Later in the shift, I see him checking call statistics and see his face turn red. He knows that his policy is not working. Malicious compliance 2. The following day, boss calls us all into the meeting room and states that we must work harder or smarter. He tells us that we need to use the on-site support team to handle the log calls instead of the day shift. We still had the 2-minute rule and the same staffing levels. I mentioned a couple times that the VIPs couldn't wait, and that we need 4 people taking calls from 8 a.m. I was told that the rules still stood. The day after, we find out that the on-site support have no free slots for over a week, which is 3 times shorter than the day shift's waiting times. Boss is in, and instead of logging onto the phone, he's simply floating around. As 8:30 rolls around, I answer yet another call. This is a VIP, the chief executive. He's in a meeting room 70 miles away, attempting to turn on his laptop, but he can't get past the encryption software. It's an easy fix, but takes 10 minutes over the phone. I can't do it because of the 2-minute rule. I'm torn between dropping the calls or annoying the chief executive. Boss sees me hesitate and asks what's going on. Me, laptop encryption, he's in distant town, The boss shuts me down. Boss, hand it off to desktop. I informed him that they wouldn't be able to get out for over a week, and that the day shift could fix this, but this is stopping the caller from working. Day shift is too busy. I don't care who it is. Hand the call off, he told me before walking off. I took the details and told the chief executive that I'd have to hand the call off. Made the notes on the call and gave the incident reference. I realized that I hadn't told him who it was, but he could get that information easily. I also saved and replayed the recorded conversation to find that my boss could be heard clearly. After lunch, I was called into the office of the head of IT. He chewed me out for leaving the chief executive without anything to present for the council's vision of the future for distant town. I was told that the chief executive wants someone's head, metaphorically, for the treatment, and that formal proceedings had started. I was to be suspended on full pay, and was asked if I had anything to add. I told the head of IT that my boss had told me to do it, and when I started to explain it, he walked away. I also told him that if he pulled my phone log for that call, he could hear the boss saying that. I was told to stay in that office while the head of IT checked. An hour later, I was told to go home on full pay and return in the morning. The result was that the new boss was replaced, fired, and a new boss was placed in his spot. New boss had been promoted internally, so he actually listened to his staff and let us suggest improvements. Senior management implement new sick absence policy. I've never been one to take time off for sick leave despite having a public sector job that pays full pay for up to 6 months of sick absence. I worked there for 18 years in the same job, and I only experienced 3 periods of actual sick leave during that time. Anytime I was feeling a bit under the weather, I would ring the office and use a day's leave. I'd get some rest, take some over-the-counter meds, and get an early night. I'd always be back at work the next day. A couple of years ago, the powers that be, for some still unknown reason, decreed that this policy was to stop. If you were sick, you must be put on sick leave, and you could not book a day's leave. A while after this policy was implemented, I woke up feeling horrible. I rang into the office to inform my boss that I was sick. He said that was okay. Thanks for letting him know. See you in the morning. I replied by asking, "What do you mean? I'm sick. I don't know when I'll be feeling well enough to come back to work." This seemed to surprise him somewhat. I informed him that when I was feeling well enough to return to work, I would let him know. Cue the obligatory 7-day self-certified sick absence off work on full pay and not a day's worth of leave used. Unsurprisingly, this policy did not stand the test of time.